Right, should be working. Hey guys, any of you who are the first ones to jump on this, which at the minute is nobody, but I'm sure you'll come along in a minute. It's my second live podcast of the day today. Got Chris Dyer with me, who is an expert in running businesses that run from home, remote workforce businesses, distributed workforces. As usual, we're recording this for later use on YouTube. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to go back in a second, record an introduction and restart talking to Chris. As always, if you've got any questions, you want to feel part of the conversation, jump on in. I'm going to try and keep the conversation flowing, but where appropriate, I will try and include as many of your questions as possible. So I can see there's a few of you on here now. So hey guys, hey Chantel. Chris, let's do it, buddy. Let me just I'm just going to move you along in the top of my screen. Right, let's go. Hey guys, it's Matt Haycox here, and today I'm with Chris Dyer. Now, Chris Dyer is a sought-after company culture expert, and he's also the author of The Power of Company Culture. Chris is a CEO. He runs a business called PeopleG2, which is a background checking company based in the USA. And the reason I've got him here today is because his team is made up entirely of remote workers. He's also appeared on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies 4 times. Now, Chris's business started in 2001. After the last financial crisis, he became 100% remote. So he's been fully remote since about 2009. And we're going to talk about some really practical tips today based on Chris's own experience. We're going to talk about tech. We're going to talk about challenges. And we're going to talk about what you guys need to know to adapt to either running your businesses from home or, I guess, being an employee working in a business which is now operating as a distributed workforce. So, Chris, thanks a lot for being here, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Matt. I'm really excited to be here to have a conversation.
You're actually my furthest away podcast ever. I've never, up until about 4 weeks ago, I'd never had anyone who was more than 3 feet away from me. Right. As of the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've been doing a lot of these, obviously online and live. So I've had UK guests, but never ever have I had someone over in sunny Orange County. So for all my UK viewers and UK listeners, you can all be very jealous at Chris's lockdown in Orange County in California. Listen, but obviously I gave a little bit of an introduction to yourself. I mean, if there's anything I've missed, please tell us. But I guess the guys are probably going to want to get into the meat of sure. what you know and what we can implement. But please, please do give us a little bit of background as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I think for the context of this conversation, I've been running a remote team since 2009, and we really did that to save money initially. This was a completely financial decision. This was not, it turned out to be an incredibly wonderful decision for culture and engagement and for the future of my company. I really made it for completely financial reasons and trying to keep our people and survive the 2009 recession. And it was a complete accident that it all worked out, that it just turned into this whole other thing, right? And I think it's a great lesson for any entrepreneurs out there, just to try new things, to try something different, and to see how it works. You can always change it back. You can change to something different. But we changed and it was like, oh, this is awesome. This is the best way to work. Works fantastic for us. We're so much happier. We have better clarity. I mean, everything got better for us. So we've been doing that since 2009.
Well, I'm glad you kind of said that right off the bat, really, that it was an accident that worked out well for you, because, I mean, I have been over the last 4 or 5 weeks, a real advocate for embracing the culture of home working, embracing the tech and the learning process that needs to go through it, because I know that me, for one, and I'm sure many other businesses, whether or not they've decided it or not yet, will take the lessons they've learned now and take make the transition to a remote workforce and continue that as a business model going forward. Maybe not in its entirety, but whether that's half and half. I mean, I know I'll be coming from a half and half perspective in that I think certain jobs. I mean, listen, I'm sure you're an expert in this, so I'm sure you can probably put a justification for every job to be remote. But I think in my head, certainly for the short term, we will have a smaller fixed team in a smaller office than we used to have, but then have distributed people around that. But I think anyone who thinks that this is just a temporary thing that they need to adjust to for a couple of months is seriously kidding themselves. And a couple of questions for then, again, just to contextualize and for practicality's sake. When you went remote in 2009, how many people were in your team?
At that time, we moved 16 people, I think, to remote. So we have a core group of people, and then we have 3,000 independent contractors that do work for us. So the core group went home. The independent contractors are also remote, but they're a different kind of remote. They're working in courthouses. They're out in the field every day, which is different than, hey, go home and work from home. So we had our core group 16, which is now 30 something, that are all work from home employees. So in the beginning, and then we lost a few. We found out that they weren't as good as we thought they were, or they couldn't hack it. Remote's not for everybody. There are some people who need someone to stand over the top of them and micromanage them all day, or they can't get things done. There's some people that just rely on work for their total social outlet, which they're not very productive employees either. But you really have to find the right person. And I think to your point, not every job can be remote. If you're making wine, you need to be in the vineyard. If you're making an airplane, you got to be on an assembly line. I mean, there are jobs that will require people to be together and to do that. But there's so many jobs that don't need to be in an office. And, there's study after study after study on the higher productivity. But even though people have gone home right now and they are home with their families, which is not very productive, right? It's so much better. You think, if anyone thinks remote is good now, wait until your family's gone and you have peace and quiet in your house and you're all by yourself, how much more you'll get done and how much better that environment will be. But even still, with all those distractions and parents having to be part-time teachers and, taking care of in-laws or grandparents or your parents or whatever it may be, this new situation, there was a study recently, just came out this week, 4% more work is being done by the average employee going remote. So they're spending 4% more of their time on their work. Now, that's not a giant number, but you take 4% times every employee you have. Right?
Is this 4% that has jumped in the last month or so while Corona's been on? This isn't like a general stat. This is a specific Corona.
This is like since COVID, people gone home and they're spending 4% of their total time of work, more of their time on actual work, on their actual stuff. So you've eliminated a lot of the crap, and they're spending 13% less time on communicating, on having to do this communication stuff, which is like meetings and, walking around the break room and walking around and talking to people, all this, the crap, right? This is the crap that we don't need to have. And so you see a decrease in the crap and you have an increase in the work just by going home, even though this is like the worst version of going remote. And think about how much better it's going to be later on when we don't, have, people walking around the house all day.
So let's talk about I guess specifics, practical tools, whether that's tech, whether that's procedures. I mean, obviously, as I said to you at the beginning of this conversation, we've been trying to embrace this and implement for the long term as opposed to just get through the next couple of months. I mean, we've started to trial tools, like Trello and Hubstaff and Slack, etc. So I mean, obviously, you've got years and years and years of experience in it. Tell us what tools we need and what your top tips are for making the best of this, or not making the best of this, but making it work.
I mean, I could probably talk for 2 hours about tools, but I'll just kind of hit some of the big ones. Slack is for us the main way in which we connect and we operate the business. And they have so many tools, they have so many plugins that it's really hard to even think about any other platform. So if you're remote now, or you're going to be remote in the future, or you're going to have some hybrid, Slack is the place where you're going to be able to communicate and have that. So you talked about having a core group of people maybe, and then having more people at home later on. You better have something like Slack, or else how do you communicate? Because email is not effective. Having constant meetings all the time, like video meetings or whatever all the time, is not effective. So Slack allows you to have rooms where you can collaborate, you can have one-on-ones, it stores files and links, but it also does all these other things. So we use it. There's a plugin to do attendance bot, it's called. People can log in and log out for, clocking in, clocking out, tracking their time, their breaks.
What's that called?
It's called attendance bot.
Attendance bot. So
we solve all of our time card and compliance issues because they go into Slack and they go, slash in, and it logs them into the time card, and then slash, and then later on they can export their timesheet and make any corrections if they forgot or something, to log out one day. So that's cool. And then we have another one called Niles, and Niles allows us to make internal FAQ. So if an employee ever had a question, we make that an FAQ, we put the answer, and any employee can go slash, how do I do this? And Slack's got the answer because someone's already asked that question, right? And so we're building an internal thing. I mean, these are all like either super cheap or free plugins, all kinds of stuff. Your Google Drive, your Microsoft, plug in all that stuff. So if someone shares a Google Doc with me, it's in my Slack. Boom, it's in my little, I have a Google, looks like a person in my Slack. All my shared files are there. So it becomes a centralized thing for us, and it's so inexpensive. You can do video calls in there. It's not so great for like large groups, but one-on-one, one-on-twos you can do. That's free. So Slack really becomes our center point. Now, beyond Slack, there are some other tools that I really think that people need. One of them is called Vidyard. And Vidyard's actually released a bunch of additional free tools during this COVID time. But what we use Vidyard for is you can go in and you put it as like a Chrome extension, you add it on, and you can record your screen and record your face if you want. That's optional.
Yeah.
But so you have an employee who says, geez, I'm working from home, I don't know how to do this thing. Right now, you can get on the phone and you can walk them through it. You could just quickly record a Vidyard and show them on your computer. Here's where you go. Here's what you do. Blah, 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 step by step, and then send the link to the video. So you're not having to send a file, send the link. What's really cool is that employee can watch that video when they're ready. You don't have to set up a time. There's all that coordination that goes into, well, what time is good for you? When are we going to meet? And what if you get delayed? And you just send them the link. And now they can watch the link as many times as they need. So if they don't get it the first time, and maybe they feel stupid telling their boss they don't get it, right? They would probably just go along and then try to figure it out. Well, they can just keep rewatching the video. We find that this happens a lot because we track the analytics on that. We see that people watch the video 4 and 5 times sometimes because they need to understand it at a deeper level. And we think, well, this is easy for me. I know how to do this, but some other employee doesn't know how to do this thing, in Excel or with this other program. And so they're watching over and over again, and that video learning becomes really important.
Can I just ask you, just for my own purposes, how do you spell Niles?
Niles.
Niles, Niles. Perfect. No, they both sound fantastic. So let's talk, I guess, a little bit of practicalities about time tracking. Then, I mean, obviously, you say you use attendance bot to plug into there. Do you just allow people to clock in and clock out and document their own timekeeping, or do you actually have anything more, any deeper level of tracking? With, sure. on Hubstaff, we're looking at the screenshots. It takes the screenshots and stores them in the cloud. I mean, obviously, you don't necessarily have to look at them, but it's just there as a deterrent. And
so I can answer this in 2 ways. Let's first talk about philosophically, how do we approach this? My opinion is if I have to worry about you, first of all, you're the wrong person. If I have to worry that you're going to be clocking in and trying to cheat me or whatever, then I've not done my job in hiring the right people who want to come in and are motivated and want to work and are honest and all of that, right? Now, beyond that, so I'm a trusting person. And by putting that trust out there, I find that 99% of the time that works in my benefit because I'm showing them I trust them and they want to show me in return that they are trustworthy. And so they're very, very clean about their time cards. In fact, I sort of have the opposite problem that sometimes people are working outside of their time clock. That they go, well, I didn't clock in, but I did this thing as client called and I just took care of it and I didn't clock in. And I have to go back and be like, no, if you worked, we need to pay you. You need to clock that in. And if you're over your hours for the week, you need to not do it. It's okay to wait until tomorrow to answer that client back, right? So we have to coach them on how to be, kind of curate that. So I find that actually people work more in this remote setting, and I have this larger issue of them sort of overdoing it. Now, trust is great, but then we can validate. And the validating part is to be measuring. So we should be having clear KPIs and goals, and the employee should understand clearly what is expected of them, what they're supposed to be getting done, and what amount of time. I mean, all these should be discussions that you have with someone when they come on board. So every one of my hourly employees who are tracking, and not all, we have some that are salary and some that are hourly. So the hourly people that are tracking all this, they have a clear idea of what that is. So let's just say I have one department that does verifications. They call employers, they call schools and verify that the information on someone's resume is correct. Well, we have figured out how many they should get done on average, right? And their manager can quickly compare. And we do this in several ways. We look at the individual and we look at the team, and they set team goals and try to come up with, we can get 10 done in an hour, right? And how do we get to 11? How do we get to 10.5? And so they're looking at that data and measuring themselves against that data. Now, if someone comes in and says they work 20 hours and their average was 5, and they're doing 5 of these an hour when everyone else is doing 10, then it's a pretty clear, we need to have a conversation. Why is this happening? Is it their hours? Is it fake hours, or are they struggling to get their work done? Are they being assigned certain work that's way harder than everyone else? I mean, so it's a conversation starter. Has anyone ever put in hours that we thought weren't legit and we had to deal with it? Absolutely. But that few amount of times and that tiny bit amount of money that I probably spent on that is nothing compared to all the productivity and trust and lack of having to deal with it for everyone else. The other 99% has been fantastic. Now, the second part is, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, please, after you.
The second part was just, there are legal differences between how you implement that here in California versus the UK versus anywhere else. So take what I'm saying and you need to filter that through. What are you legally required to do to track people's hours? And I can't answer that for everyone across the globe. For us, we have to do a reasonable amount of stuff. And we think with those people we do, because we are looking at their output versus hours, and that what makes sense. There are other jobs where that's really hard to do. And so we look at goals, right? Are they getting those goals done? Are they achieving the things that we thought they should be achieving if they're on salary? And then we determine whether or not they're a right fit to move forward. So you have to kind of tinker that based on, your local laws and your approach to make sure it fits.
Okay, let's talk about some of the negatives of remote workforce. I guess in terms of people potentially feeling isolated, lack of interaction with other staff members and human beings. I mean, how do you counteract something like that? What ideas and strategies do you use to kind of maintain normality in people's mental health?
Sure. So there's a couple things. And feel free to stop me at any point because this will be a little bit of a longer answer. So
don't worry.
First of all, managers need to stop having one-on-one meetings. So if you take one thing from me today in this podcast, stop having one-on-one meetings, especially right now while you're remote. Now, there are situations where you have to have one-on-ones. Maybe it's a coaching thing. Maybe it's a review. I get it. There's those times, but in most situations, you're remote, you need to be having team meetings, 5 to 7 people. And that's how communication flows. That's how you get people feeling connected and eliminate the loneliness. and get people moving faster. So what I find when I do consult for companies, especially when they're doing remote stuff, the more one-on-one meetings they have, the slower they go, the longer it takes them to get from point A to point B, and the more team meetings they have, the faster they go. So this is why Scrum and Agile is so popular with, inside the business world. When we get people together in teams and they can quickly communicate, quickly decide what to do, pivot and change directions if things aren't working, these have incredible impacts on productivity and performance. And later on, that has an impact on your profits. So if you're going to believe me and you're going to start meeting, that's great. But now you need to start meeting in a very specific way. And you need to curate your meetings in a very specific way. And I'll tell you how we curate our meetings. So we have two types of meetings that are simple, that are small. So they're 15 minutes, no more than 15 minutes. We always start on time. If you're starting meetings late, you've already screwed up your culture. You've already screwed up remote work. So if your meeting's at 2, you start at 2 or no later than 2:01, right? If people are getting on and you have a little bit of lag, if maybe some people that aren't as technical that are still struggling with meetings right now, by 2:01, you're going. And that sets the tone. And if you have people that show up late, you make them sing, you find some fun punishment, to make sure that they don't ever, use peer pressure to make sure they want to show up. I mean, you got to get going. You think of all the meetings you start at 2:04 and 2:05 and 2:06, you take all those people's salaries times all that time and how much you have wasted, how much money you have just wasted sitting on the phone, meeting after meeting after meeting, waiting 5 or 6 or 7, 10 minutes for people to all get in there. So make sure you start on time. It's really huge. Always try to end early. There's some cognitive biases or some brain stuff going on there. But if you're always trying to end the meeting early, you will stay tight. You will stay compact. You won't talk about things that aren't important for that meeting. Always have an agenda. So our first 2 15-minute meetings only have one agenda item. So our first one is called a cockroach meeting. And that is if you have a small problem, like if you had a cockroach in your bathroom, it's a small problem. It's not a big deal, but you got to take care of it, right? And so we average about 35 cockroach meetings a day in our company. And so someone says, hey, I have a problem. They invite 5 to 7 people. At 1:00, I have this one problem. Who can help me? And it's optional to show up. So if you get invited to a cockroach meeting, if you can show up, if you feel like you can contribute, if you're free at 1:00, you show up and help for less than 15 minutes on average. If our average cockroach meeting is 8 minutes. You get connected, you see your people, you deal with the issue, you help that person get unstuck and move them on to the next point of wherever they're at in their process. And that works super effective. Now, sometimes it's not a problem we're trying to solve. Sometimes we just need information and we need help. And so this is where that email goes out, right? To 20 people or to 10 people. And you have this time-wasting email chain that goes on for days of people arguing back and forth and sending more information and contradicting. It ruins productivity. Instead, call an ostrich meeting. Get on the phone for 15 minutes or less and say, help me understand this thing. I don't understand. Who can help me understand whatever this thing is? Teach me how to do an Excel formula. Tell me why this client requires this thing. Whatever it is you need information on. And whoever can give you that information pops on the call and they do that. And again, you're connecting, you're getting that, moving that thing across. So that's our small meetings. And those are the ones we use all the time. We have larger meetings. So anything that's 30 minutes or more, an hour or more, sometimes our executive team do these all day. We call them tiger team meetings. And if you have a tiger in your bathroom, it's a much bigger problem, right? You would probably need animal control, a dart gun, a crane. There's preparation would need to go. So this is a bigger meeting where there's preparation. There's an agenda with multiple items that's been sent out in advance. Everyone knows why we're meeting and that we're going to require a lot from everyone, from research, from information, from their attention, that this is not a little tiny quick meeting. This is a serious, we have a tiger to deal with, right? And so it sets the tone, right? I have heard, I can't tell you how many complaints, and we're talking in the thousands that I have people telling me personally, reading on LinkedIn or social about people being stuck on these hour-long Zoom calls with 50 people or 100 people in their company. and they are sick of them. They're unproductive. They're not getting anything out of them. They're just sitting on a call, staring at 100 bubbles on the screen, and I've got one person talking, and there's no collaboration, there's no connectedness, and they feel totally, out of whack from what they normally are. You can solve this by getting rid of that. Now, it's okay to have a meeting every once in a while with your entire team, but that's called a webinar, and you better present that in a very different way, not get 100 people to show up and pretend like you're having a meeting where you're really listening to them, because you're not. The last meeting is a tsunami planning meeting, and this is a what if situation. So every month, once a month, all of we call them infinite teams. These are teams that live forever. Sales team, customer service team, marketing team, right? Not my temporary teams, but my infinite teams. They get together once a month and they do a what if scenario. Like the team leader comes up with a crazy thing. What if a global pandemic happened? What would we do, right? What if the economy, suddenly dropped? What if we landed this large client? What would we need to do? And this is people practicing arguing, psychological safety, seeing that their coworkers will value their opinion, practicing, listening and being heard. And so it's a fake scenario. And so it's really good to practice having a good meeting by practicing this fake thing that actually gets people thinking about new ideas for your business. Now, I know I said a whole lot there. The last thing to really dive into your point, any meeting that is 30 minutes or more, we do an exercise called bonding. Bonding is when you first show up, you go around the room, leaders go last, the most senior people go last. How is everyone showing up? Ask that simple question and you will get, I'm really excited to be at work today, to I have a newborn, I'm exhausted, I can barely keep my eyes open. I'm going crazy, I'm stuck with my spouse and my 9 kids and I'm going to kill myself. This is like the worst thing I've ever, whatever you're going to get from your people. And you can gauge as the leader, are we in tune here to have this meeting? Is everyone in a mental space, or do we need to deal with their anxieties, their issues? Is one particular person in the group suddenly having an acute issue, like maybe someone just died in their family? Do you need to stop and help them before you go back to the group? That gives the leaders that intuitive understanding on how to manage their meetings and their people by getting them to tell them how they're doing. And then at the end of the meeting, you ask, how is everyone leaving? Again, leaders go last. And the reason for that is if leaders go first, if I say I'm happy, everyone else is going to say they're happy. If I say I'm excited, they're going to say they're excited. Nobody wants to say if the boss was happy, they don't want to show up and be like, well, I'm actually miserable, right? So you have to go last so that they have that freedom. When you say, how are you leaving, people tend to be a little bit more business focused. They tend to be a little bit more about the meeting, how are they feeling about what we talked about. And again, as a leader, you can realize, great, everyone's on board, or geez, that meeting is not enough. We got to meet again because people are confused. They don't understand what's happening. We don't have agreement yet, whatever it may be. So I know that was the world's longest answer, which is like the worst thing you're supposed to do in a podcast, but I'll shut up and let you pop in here, Matt.
Say the last bit again, sorry.
I said, I know over talking on a podcast is like the worst thing. So
no. Yeah, you're doing great, mate. I mean, it's all fantastic information, mate. I love it. So, but listen, I guess, it's only been a half an hour, but you've given some fantastic tools. All the animals that I've been taking my notes here. I've got ostrich, tiger, and everything else written down. But no, it's been very, very helpful to me, and I know the guys at home are going to have got some valid points from there. I mean, it's interesting, I guess, how much effort needs to go into the whole concept of getting it right from the outset. You don't really think about it normally because you go to work and you kind of just get in the office and get on with it. And I think people initially assume, well, we just go home and work from home, but there is so much planning that needs to go in to do it properly. And I think the rewards for the correct effort put in at the beginning, pay exponential dividends. So no, it's been fantastic having you here, mate. Fantastic.
Well, great. I'm glad I could give something. If anyone wants a deeper dive into that stuff's in my book. There's a free
Well,
podcast on my
I was just
website.
about
Which,
I was just about to say
yeah,
before you go, do you want to tell us where we can find you? Give yourself an Insta shout out. Where can we find your book?
yeah. So anyone's welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. My website is Chris P, the letter P like Patrick, Dyer.com. The book is The Power of Company Culture. You can get on Amazon or Bull or wherever you buy your books online. My publisher is actually Kogan Page, which is there in the UK. So you can get it off their website as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Chris. It's been great to see you, and I know we're all going to put this to some fantastic use over the coming months, and hopefully for the years to come.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, buddy.